Hi, this is Angela Breidenbach, and I'm here with one of my sister authors, Niki, Niki Turner, and she is going to tell us a little bit about her story and have fun with us on the Q&A with the Vine Bookstore Book Club at Faith Church in Dyer, Indiana. Hey, ladies! And this is Niki Turner, and she's from Colorado, and this is the Blue Ribbon Brides. And so I want to tell you a little bit about her story. Her story is called First Comes Pie, and by the way, for readers, there's a great recipes at the end of her story, so you want to be able to make your own recipes right from the book, which is fun. And First Comes Pie is Apple Pie Days in Colorado, 1920. When Emmett Dewey visits his latest land acquisitions, the last thing he expects to find is a lovely young woman stealing his apples. Lorelei Boyd is determined to win the annual Apple Pie Days contest. Intrigued, Emmett agrees not to call the sheriff if Lorelei will bring him a slice of every apple pie she makes and allow him to decide which recipe she enters in the contest. He sounds a little devious to me. All right. Niki Turner is a novelist, journalist, and blogger. Her first completed manuscript earned second place in the Touched by Love 2009 Contemporary Category Romance Contest. She writes for local newspapers and won second place for Best Agricultural Story at the 2013 Colorado Press Association Annual Convention. She is a co-blogger with InkWellInspirations.com. Niki is the president of the Western Slope chapter of the American Christian Fiction Writers. Connect with Niki on Facebook or Twitter and visit her website for information on her other books. And her website is nikiturner.net, and her name is spelled NIKITURNER.net. So, Niki Turner, meet the ladies from the Vine Bookstore Book Club at Faith Church in Dyer, Indiana, and I'm going to turn it over to you ladies.
Hi.
Hi, Niki.
Hello. How are you guys today?
Good. How are you?
We're great, thank you.
We're getting snowed on.
Are you in Colorado? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
We're on.
So I need to update a little bit of my bio. Since I published First Comes Pie, my husband and I bought the local newspaper, and I am now the editor and co-publisher as well.
Wow.
Congratulations.
It's been a busy 6 months.
I can imagine. Wow.
Oh, that's exciting.
That is.
It's very fun. The paper is 132 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
So what does that do for your writing?
Mostly I get to go through really old copies of the newspaper. I go through the 100 years ago every week and pick out little tidbits, interesting things. And generally I find tons of inspiration for stories from actual real life events that took place 100 years ago or 125 years ago.
Wow. So it's more inspiring than taking away from.
Yeah, it really is. And then also when I get home at night and it's time to write and time to sit down and get into fiction, it's a wonderful escape from real news. So.
Yeah, no kidding. So tell us how you came up with the idea for your story.
Well, the story came to me. I was actually writing. We just moved back to the town that we lived in for 14 years. And we were living in my old hometown, and I was working for the paper there, and I was writing a bi-monthly column where I went out and interviewed kind of our pioneer families, and I interviewed a couple. They were super sweet. They were both in their 80s, and I interviewed them, and they explained to me that the area where we lived, and I didn't know this. I grew up there and never knew this information. In the early 1900s was an agricultural mecca. Sugar beets and apples and peaches and all of that has since disappeared. And so they were explaining to me, oh yeah, we have this apple orchard, and this was her family's apple orchard since way back when in the 1800s. And I know for you guys back there, that's like, oh yeah, the 1800s, yeah, that's not that long ago. But in Colorado, pre-1850 or so, it was just Native Americans out here. So they started telling me about apple pie days. And I said, well, what is apple pie days? And they said, well, it came before the county fair. And all of the ladies in the community would get together, and they all were asked to bake 6 pies apiece. And I thought, oh my God, 6 pies, there's no way. So they each did 6 pies, and they did apple pies because apples were very prevalent there. And they did the pies, and they brought them into town, and they had a festival, and they gave away pie and coffee. And it turned into this huge event that would attract people from all over the region to come and have free pie and coffee. And from that event came what ended up turning into our county fair now, which is still held in that community. And so I thought, oh, apple pie days. And then I think Gina had mentioned to me about doing something that revolved around a fair. And I thought, oh, I have something for that. And that's just kind of how it came up, is that, these people that was such a hard life and so much work and so much strain. And I ended up going to the museum, which is another one of those things that research, I call it, you can call it research, but it's actually just go have fun day. Went to the museum, talked to the curator there, and said, so what can you tell me about apple pie days? And this is a community of, I think currently there are about 6,000 people. The one we just moved to is about 2,000 people. So lots, and they have not a whole lot of stuff, but a lot of history that they're very protective of. And so they took me around and showed me their history information. And their first woman who was named the Apple Pie Days Queen, her name was Blanche, and they have this hysterical picture of her. It's a portrait blown up, probably, 14 by 17. Remember those old portraits, how they would be black and white, and then they would just colorize a certain part of it? So it's a picture of her, and she's black. It's all in black and white, and then she has this apple, and she's taking a bite of this apple, and just the apple is colorized. And she just looks naughty. And I thought she was fun. I just really thought she was interesting. And it turns out that she was named the first Apple Pie Days Queen. And after that year, she married within that year, she married, I can't remember what his title was, but he worked for Texaco Oil, because we had oil shale. And he worked there. She married him, so he was wealthy and well off. And then a couple years later, he passed away. They had a son, and she took over his job. Which back in 1910, 1911, that was kind of unheard of. And so she was sort of my inspiration. That there's this heroine she's feisty and she's spunky, and she's she really, really wants to win this competition because she wants to save her parents' farm. She wants to save them from the financial problems that they're having, and she thinks this is the way to do it. And so that's really where the idea came from, was from spending entirely too many hours in the library wearing white gloves. If you've ever gone in and done archive research with old newspapers, they take you in to one of the little library glassed-in rooms, and they bring the papers to you, and they're in a big, huge bindery copy. So it's like my grandson calls them giant books. He says, oh, you're going to read the giant book, Mimi. Giant book, yes. So you lay this book down, and they give you a pair of white cotton gloves, and they put the cotton gloves down, and you're allowed to touch the pages, but only wearing the white cotton gloves because they're trying to protect this archive. So I spent a day doing that, and a day at the museum, and that's where the story came from, pretty much. And that's where I grew up. So it worked really well for me because it was like stepping back in time right where I lived. So
That's really cool.
it was fun.
I really enjoyed this story. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'm glad you liked it.
Would you tell us a little bit about the next project, or the next that you're working on, or the next book that you have coming out?
There have been several since this one came out in September. Primarily, I've been working with Cynthia Hickey with her Forget-Me-Not romance collections, and so we did a follow-up to the very first novella I ever wrote, which was with her group. And that was Christmas Matchmakers. And then that came out in December. Like I said, it's been a crazy 6 months. And I think this one came out, this is Turquoise Treasure. This is part of the Route 66 collection.
What
This
a
one,
cute cover.
isn't it fun? And it's set in the 50s. It was super fun to write. My sons took me to Gallup, New Mexico, which is where this is set, because it's on Route 66. Took me to Gallup for a research trip, which was really entertaining. They're grown, so it was okay. They could drive. Anyway, so this one is available. It's on Amazon, and it's also available on the Forget Me Not Romance website. So that one came out, I think, in November. I can't remember. My world has blurred together into a series of when did the paper come out weeks. And then this is Sweet Talk, and this one just came out a couple weeks ago. This is a Valentine's Day story, and it's these are both parts of collections that, if you like ebooks, these are very, very economical, because you get like 9 stories for a couple dollars. Or you can I just get the paperbacks so that my husband will read them. He won't read them on the ebook. And he reads my books, which is kind of weird.
That's awesome. So where can we find you? What social media do you do?
I am pretty much always on Facebook, more than I should be. Most of us. I'm rarely on Twitter, but I have Twitter, and I have a Pinterest board. If you want to see that picture of Blanche on my Pinterest board, there's a picture of her. I took a picture from the museum and put that on my Pinterest page if you want to check that out. And there's some other pictures from the museum and some historical things.
Is your Pinterest handle, is it Niki Turner? Or?
Yep.
Okay, so NikiTurner for Pinterest and Facebook and even rarely Twitter.
Yes, rarely Twitter. So that's where I am most of the time. And awesome. I've got an Amazon author page. That's an easy way to look up all of the different books that have come out. There's some others. And then I just finished one. I'm in edits right now for one, I think we're calling it the Love Me Tender collection, and it's Elvis songs. Nice. So I asked my kids to pick for me, and they picked blue suede shoes. Try writing a romance about blue suede shoes. It was fun. So.
All right, we have to close out our call,
okay.
So I'm going to turn off the recorder, and then you can have your last couple questions with the book club while I get our next author, Carrie Fansett Pagels, on.
Great.
Okay.